Hi, I'm Jordan Schaus, one of the preachers at the Kemble Road Church of Christ. The sermon you're about to hear was preached at our church, where we are committed to preaching just the Bible. We're all about connecting the ancient truths of God to our modern times. We encourage you to open your Bibles, study along, and follow along with us as we study together and seek to live life the Bible way.
Well, what I want to talk about today is faith and works. Faith and works is something that kind of plagues a question in a lot of our minds. If you haven't asked yourself some version of this particular question, what role do works play in our salvation, you probably will at some point. And even if you've got a good answer for it now, sometimes we ask ourselves this question at various times in our life. It normally doesn't come out as this, right? We don't ask ourselves these very words. But sometimes it comes out as something a little bit more emotional. Something like, am I doing enough for Christ? Or am I really worthy of the blood of Christ? Right? Those are a little bit more, have a little bit more emotional hit to them, but they all really boil down to the same question. Right? Same question is, what's expected of us in God's plan of salvation for us? Right? What do we have to do to fit into His plan? Does that make sense? So I want to try to answer this question today because I think it's important. If we look out in the world of religiosity, if that's a word, we have lots of different answers to this question. There's some people that are out there that think that you can really kind of you can work off just about any sin. If you sin, you can go and you can get prescribed a certain number of rosaries or Hail Marys, or you could pay a certain amount of money. In fact, if you know ahead of time that you're going to sin, you can go ahead and pay money ahead of time. I think they call that indulgences, right? And it's really based, it's very heavy on works. You can work off your faith. But then on the other side of this argument, you have people that believe that there's nothing you can do. And they'll literally say that. There's nothing you could do, good or bad, to affect your salvation. So what is it? Right? So what role do works play in our salvation? Well, I think this is a little bit of a complicated issue. And like most complicated issues, you typically start with what you know to try to go and build towards what you are trying to figure out. So one of the things that we know, and one of the things that I want to get off the table right off the bat is that we can't earn our salvation. I don't think there's anybody out there, even if we go back to the people that we were talking about before, where you can, do a certain number of things to work off your sins. I don't even think those people go so far as to say that they can earn their salvation, that they could do enough works to be owed salvation. I think it's a little bit of a straw man argument. I think it's not necessarily done in good faith. I had good faith. We're going to talk about faith here in a little bit. But it's something that we threw myself off. That particular argument, I don't think is what most people say anyway. So I want to go ahead and make sure that we're all on the same page. We can never earn our salvation. No matter what works we do, we're never meriting that salvation. So we're going to get that off the table right away. One of the passages that we would go to for that is in Ephesians chapter 2. This is a very familiar passage when we're talking about these things. Ephesians chapter 2, starting verse 8, it says, "For by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not of your own doing, but it is the gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast." If you've been presented with this passage before, there's some things about it that we absolutely recognize, right? That this is a gift of God. And as a gift, we don't really work for it. We don't earn it in any particular way. We also understand the idea of grace, that grace is unmerited favor. It's something that we're not owed, right? So we understand this, and the fact that it says this is not of our own doing and not a result of works is very clear in this passage. If we tie this in with Luke chapter 17, there's there's an illustration that Jesus is using here. In our particular culture, we sometimes have a hard time with this particular illustration, but it still stands. It says, will any of you, in verse 7, will any of you who has a servant plowing or keeping sheep say to him when he has come in from the field, come at once and recline at table? Will he not rather say to him, prepare supper for me and dress properly and serve me while I eat and drink, and afterwards you will eat and drink? So, again, in our culture, we're used to going to restaurants where we pay money and we get food and we get service, and that's the job, right? They're expected to do a duty and they get recompensed, and we can say thank you. And it's totally what's expected in our society. And theirs was a little bit different, but then verse 9 is what the crux of the matter is. He says, does he thank the servant because he did what was commanded? So you also, and the implied answer is no, right? So you also, when you have done all that you were commanded, say, we are unworthy servants. We have only done what was our duty. So imagine you have a task, and this is just your task that you must do. Do you do it for the praise? Do you do it for some kind of recompense? The idea is that, I like the way that the King James says it. It says unprofitable. So we are unprofitable servants. But the idea is that even if we do everything, we're not gaining anything. This makes particular sense when we put this in the spiritual context, when we put this with God. Let's just say hypothetically we were to pull all of our money or a lot of other people's money and make a fantastic temple for God. That's not our thing, but let's just say that we did. Would there be any situation where what we built would gain anything for God? Like, no. He supplied all the raw materials in the first place. Everything that he has, he owns. If he could build something better, he would, right? He doesn't need anything from us. And he's made this point abundantly clear in other places in the scriptures. He doesn't need anything physical from us. There's nothing that we can do that can ever put us in a positive or a profitable category for God. And we understand this concept. So if we take these two particular verses, and there's some other ones out there, and we stop there, it certainly sounds like we can't do anything. Works don't count for anything for our salvation. But let's keep going. If you turn over to James chapter 2, and I'm sure that as soon as some people saw the Faith and Works title on the screen, some people already started turning over James chapter 2. This is a very popular verse for us because it's extremely clear. You know, James, Peter, John, they tend to just say things like they are, whereas you got Paul and Luke that are a little bit more educated and sometimes a little bit harder to understand. In James chapter 2, starting verse 19, it says, you believe that God is one, you do well. This is probably the harshest sarcastic statement. You know, this is said in a very harsh, sarcastic tone. It says, even the demons believe and shudder. Do you want to be shown, you foolish person, that faith apart from works is useless? He's about to launch into a very small argument, but a very effective one, showing that faith without works is useless. Now, we're going to skip over the argument for just a little bit and go to the end. He says, as he's concluding this argument, he says, you see, again, argument that's temporarily omitted, that the person is justified by works and not by faith alone. Now, to my knowledge, when we're talking about salvation, this is the only place in the Bible talking about salvation where you see the words faith and only or faith and alone next to each other. And unfortunate for some, there's a not right in front of it, right? So James makes it very clear that that faith isn't the only thing in this equation for us. If we go to Matthew chapter 7, we see kind of both of these concepts put together. Matthew chapter 7, verse 21, it says, not everyone who says to me, this is Jesus talking, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. So right off the bat, we see that there's a certain amount of faith. Sometimes, again, in the world of religiosity, I'm going to keep using that word until it becomes a word. Where we see that the idea that just a simple acknowledgement of God is enough to count for faith. And so we see in this particular passage that there's people that recognize Jesus as the Lord, and yet that's not enough for them to enter the kingdom of heaven. What's scarier is we go to the next verse. It says, "On that day many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, cast out demons in your name, do many mighty works in your name? And I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness." So now we see that there's a third dimension to this, right? There's faith, there's positive works, and then there's negative works. And they're all part of this idea of what is expected of us for his plan of salvation for us. All right, so we're not done with what we know. I know it just kind of left you guys really confused right now, but let's start over with what we do, what we can know for a fact. One of the things that we know for a fact is that faith is absolutely essential. We know this from a lot of different places, but if we go to Hebrews chapter 11, Hebrews chapter 11, this is a very familiar verse for a lot of people. Hebrews chapter 11 says, "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen." This is a very good, succinct definition of faith. It says, "For by the people of old received their commendation." Commendation is like a pat on the back, or I want to say like attaboy, or good job, or what we really know from the scriptures is the well done, right? Well done. Verse 6, it says, "For without faith it is impossible to please him. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him." This chapter is sometimes called the Heroes of Faith chapter, or the Hall of Fame of Faith, because there's a lot of different people in there that are all ascribed this level of faith. In fact, if we go to verse 8 and 9, it says, "By faith Abraham obeyed when he was called out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And when he went out, not knowing where he was going, by faith he went to live in a land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise." This is the typical pattern here in Hebrews chapter 11, is that it's a by faith statement, a person, and then did something, right? This is something that we see all throughout the Hebrews chapter 11. I could have picked anybody, but I'm going to pick on Abraham today. Even in this particular verse, it says, by faith he went, by faith he obeyed. There's something remarkably absent from this chapter. There is not a by faith somebody thought, or by faith somebody felt, right? It's always an action, an external action that happens in this passage. For example, we see here obeyed, and he's specifically talking about going to the land of promise. If we go down a little bit further in verse 17, it says, by faith Abraham, whenever he was tested, offered up Isaac. There's a lot of action whenever we talk about offering up sacrifices. I mean, if we know that story, they journeyed and they carried and they prepared things. So, I mean, there's a lot of works that are all wrapped up in that idea of offering. So here's the point that James makes. Let's go back to James. Remember that part that we skipped over? James chapter 2, starting verse 20. This is the part that we already read. Do you want to be shown, you foolish person, that faith apart from works is useless? Now let's go into the argument. He says, was not Abraham our father justified by works when he offered up his son Isaac on the altar? In Hebrews, it calls it faith. In James, it calls it works. Same event, same justification, same everything else. It's just one is works and one is faith. James answers how this is possible in the very next verse. He says, you see that faith was active along with his works, and faith was completed by his works. I like this idea. That works complete our faith. Now, I'll admit, I spent a lot of time trying to come up with a different word than complete. I like complete. James uses a good word there, and I know you guys are thinking, good, Aaron, you agree with the Bible. That's probably good. Yeah, right? But a lot of times I like to try to put things in my own words, try to describe things in a way that makes sense, more sense to me, and use my own words to describe it. And so I went through a lot of different words trying to figure out what this relationship was between faith and works. We know that like what we see here in James, that they're tied very closely together. So at first I was trying to think to myself, well, your works display your faith. I thought, well, that's pretty good. Maybe not. I don't want to infer that somehow works are like a display. Right? Okay, so I don't like that word. Then I went to another word. It's like maybe they demonstrate your faith. It was the same kind of idea. Yes, your works demonstrate your faith, but I didn't want somebody to come away with the idea that works are just a demonstration, right? I didn't want that either. So I finally came up with the idea of reflect. So just like a mirror reflects light, your works reflect the faith that's already in you. Faith, a lot of times, whenever we're talking about belief and what we think, is all internal. But to get it outside of our bodies, we need some way to get that light out. And those are reflected in our works. So this is a working faith. And this is one of the things that really is the point of my lesson. Whenever I go to the very beginning of my lesson, I talk about faith and works like they're separate. But really, they are the same. I want to try to drive this point home in a weird way. I say weird. I think it's weird. I thought it was weird when I thought it up. Maybe you guys think it's okay. I don't know. I'm going to keep going. All right. This idea of breaking faith. If you guys like word studies, this is a good one. It doesn't take very long. You could just put it into any search engine, and you can see all the different times that the phrase break faith or breach of faith comes up. And you'll notice a pattern about every single time that those things are mentioned. And I'm going to start off with a passage that actually doesn't say breaking faith, but it's the idea. It's in Numbers chapter 14. If you turn over to Numbers chapter 14, let me set the stage a little bit. The Israelites have left Egypt. They've gone through the Red Sea. They've done everything at Mount Sinai. They've gone through the wilderness, and now they're at the land of Canaan for the first time. They've sent out their 12 spies. 10 of them came back. I'm sorry, all 12 of them came back. Nobody died. 10 of them came back with a negative report. 2 of them came back with a positive report. And what the people of Israel latched onto was the negative report. So in Numbers chapter 14, starting verse 1, it says, "Then all the congregation raised a loud cry. And the people wept that night. All the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, 'Would that we have died in the land of Egypt, or would that we have died in the wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become prey. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt?'" The people of Israel completely reject doing what God had told them to do. And what I find is very interesting is they kept a form of their faith. Remember, if we talk about some of the definitions of faith that are out there in this world of religiosity, is that sometimes just a mental acknowledgement of God is enough to qualify. Well, they clearly still have that. It says, why is the Lord bringing us to this land? They acknowledge flatly that the Lord exists, that he brought them out of the land of Egypt, that he got them to that point. And yet, in the very, whenever God responds to them, he says, but the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting to all the people of Israel. This is verse 10. Verse 11 says, and the Lord said to Moses, how long will this people despise me, and how long will they not believe in me, in spite of all the signs that I've done among them? God still takes their inaction as a lack of belief. This is, again, this is the point that I think James makes, and this is the point that is made in the Old Testament, is that faith and works are one in the eyes of God. To kind of further prove this point, we're not going to go through every word study. That's something that's great, and you can do it on your own. But let's talk about Moses. If anybody had an amazing faith, there's a couple of people that rise to the top of that list, and Moses is one of them. Deuteronomy chapter 32, starting at verse 48, this is the end of Moses' life. He's being told to go up onto a mountain. In fact, I'm going to skip over all the places where they say the different names because I'm not good at pronouncing those names. But he's told to go up on this mountain, and in verse 50 it says, and die on the mountain which you go up, and be gathered to your people as Aaron your brother died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his people. Because you broke faith with me in the midst of the people of Israel at the waters of Meribah Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin, and because you did not treat me as holy in the midst of the people of Israel. This breaking faith is, I find this is a very interesting phrase, because he could have said, you broke my word, you broke my command, you broke, in other places we could talk about how they broke the law, right? That's a very familiar phrase in our vernacular, but instead it was break faith. That's what he equates to the breaking of law. Breaking his command was equal to breaking faith. And of course he's talking about whenever Moses struck the rock instead of speaking to it in Numbers chapter 20. If we go to another example that's not nearly quite so glamorous is 1 Chronicles chapter 10. This is talking about Saul. This is, again, the end of Saul. Saul's death has already occurred. It says in verse 12, all the valiant men rose and took away the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons and brought them to Jabesh. And there they buried their bones under the oak of Jabesh and fasted 7 days. So Saul died for his breach of faith. He broke faith with the Lord in that he did not keep the command of the Lord, and also consulted mediums seeking guidance and did not seek guidance from the Lord. Therefore the Lord put him to death and turned the kingdom over to David, the son of Jesse. This is, again, this strange phrase. I guess it's not really strange when you read over it, but whenever you start thinking about how they broke faith, faith is what we typically think of it as being something inside of us, something that might be bright or might be dim, but it's something that's inside of us. But this is equating that works with that faith. So I think anytime we go through the scriptures and we see things like Paul talks about how we're saved through faith, I think it's inferred that faith that he's talking about is a working faith. It's something that has works that are attached to it. So if we go back to this, this idea, Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 8 through 10, says, for by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not of your own doing, it is the gift of God, not as a result of works that anyone may boast. If we just stop there and we cherry pick that verse, then yes, it does seem to say that there's no works involved. But if you go to the very, very next verse, it says, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, right? Which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. This is that same idea that we have the faith the grace that was shown us, the gift that we're given through our faith implies that there's works. So, good news and bad news, right? Good news is that works are a lot easier to see and judge than something that's inside of us. Bad news is that works are a lot easier to see and judge than what's inside us, right? So here's what it comes down to. Let's say that you do good works, but it's really only for your friends and family. I hate to say it, but you've got a friends and family faith, right? Or let's say that you come back to you study your Bible and you read and you come to church and you pray, but really only whenever things are going bad in your life. You got bad news. You got a rainy day faith. Now trust me, my toes are hurting right now, right? So if anybody else has hurting toes right now, I do too. If you only do things for strangers, right? You're really good at showing love and compassion and kindness, but to people that you don't know, people that you're not attached to, right? You've got a strange faith. You got a stranger faith, right? We could start to see what kind of actions we do in the kind of situations that we have, and we could see our own faith reflected through those actions. The idea is to one day have a complete faith, or what the scriptures call a perfect faith, where it doesn't matter the situation or who it is or when it is or how I'm feeling, that we still have those works that shine our faith through to the rest of the world and to God, right? So, in closing, this is a point that I feel like is really, really important for us to keep on, right? To make sure that we don't get out of balance with this idea. And I'll tell you why. There's a little bit of a danger if you put too much or too little emphasis on works. And you have in your mind this idea that maybe you could have a faith that's way up here and works that are down here. Or maybe you're doing a lot of works and you feel like that is, right, it's somehow there's a disparity there. So can I give you guys a litmus test? If you feel one of the problems with thinking too much about works is that if you feel like you have to overcome every sin that you commit, that somehow you have to work towards getting back in favor with God, or that He doesn't love you unless you do a certain amount of things for Him, that He already has loved you and will love you and has already offered His Son. He's already done all of those things for you. But if you start thinking that way, that can become a mountain of pressure. And I don't know about you guys, but if I had to repay, even if it was something very small, repay everything that I've done against God, that would become a crushing mountain very quickly. So here's a litmus test. Do you feel like you're about to give up? You feel like you're about to quit? You're hanging on by a thread to your faith? If you do feel that way, you have too much of an emphasis on works. Yet you feel like you have to work towards earning God's love. That's something that you need to be careful about and back yourself off from. But on the other side, let's say you feel completely comfortable in your salvation. Nothing's really changed about what you do or what you think in the last year, 2 years, 5 years, right? You're just kind of steadily going along. You may be relying too much on this idea that faith can save you even though your works are down here, right? If nobody at your workplace or school place knows that you're a Christian, you might be relying on the fact that I come to church and I sing the songs and I feel it in my heart and I know so much about God, but nobody in the outside world would ever know that I'm a Christian. That's a dangerous litmus test, right? I believe, the right idea about works and faith should really do two things. One, it should drive us to better works all the time. We should be confident in our salvation, but never comfortable with where we are. Does that make sense? Complacence, I think, is the other term. We should never be complacent with where we are. We should never be comfortable with where we are. We should constantly be trying to do something else. We should have like a 1-year plan, 5-year plan of what we want to be able to do, what we want to have learned, what we want to have as built into our personality that's more like Christ, because we all have them, right? I've got plenty of things that I need to be working on all the time. We need to have those plans, and growth is uncomfortable a lot of times. But we can also have complete confidence that God sees our faith and respects our faith, and that we can have this confidence in our salvation. So, if you're in a place where you feel either like you're about to give up, like it's hard, right? You feel like there's just too much to do. You've done too much in your life. There's no way that you're ever going to be. There's no way that on the day of judgment He's going to be like, you know what? You just messed up way too many times. Right? My blood can't cover all that. Don't worry. That's not the answer. He's done everything for you. But don't get complacent. Don't rest, and don't get to a place where you're resting on this idea that I've got enough faith that will carry me through. I know we typically don't do an invitation, so this is an invitation. But if at any point along the way, one of the things about faith and works is they're very internal, they're very personal, they're very much things that we do for ourselves or on our own. But thankfully, we don't have to do it by ourselves. We have each other to work with, and they can help me, and I can help them. So if there's anybody in this audience that needs somebody to talk to, you don't have to wait for a specific invitation. You can catch us between classes or after the doors close. Any time is a good time to get your faith and your works back together.
Thank you so much for listening to this sermon. You can find more sermons and resources at our website, thebibleway.com. If you have any questions over anything that you've heard, we'd love to talk about them with you, and you can contact us at info@thebibleway.com. If you'd like to study together, we'd love to meet with you face-to-face. Contact us through our website or come to meet us face-to-face this next Sunday. We'll have a seat saved just for you.